with ZipRecruiter.
With bird flu infections across the nation surging and the egg supply plummeting, wholesale egg prices are at record levels.
The H5N1 bird flu impacting tens of millions of farmed chickens nationwide. Egg prices up 65% in the last year. And businesses are also feeling the pressure. In Washington state, police are investigating brazen theft after they say suspects stole more than 500 eggs from a local cafe.
ABC News chief national correspondent Matt Gutman. Vice President J.D. Vance in his first foreign trip in his new position, where he's slamming over-regulation of artificial intelligence.
Vice President J.D. Vance in Paris.
We believe that excessive regulation of the AI sector could kill a transformative industry just as it's taking off.
Vance is in France for a summit being held on artificial intelligence. He criticized EU regulations targeting the industry. Later this week, Vance heads to the Munich Security Conference, where he is expected to meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky. President Trump has repeatedly threatened to cut off aid to Ukraine. Inez de la Cuetara, ABC News, Paris.
Santorini hit with a powerful 5.3 magnitude earthquake, the strongest to strike the Greek island in recent weeks. Tremors from that quake were felt in Athens, about 180 miles away. More than 15,000 people have evacuated Santorini due to the earthquakes, which have now lasted more than 2 weeks. Chuck Severson, ABC News.
My doctor told me my blood pressure is borderline. I figured I could worry about it or do something about it. So I took control with Garlic Healthy Blood Pressure Formula. It works safely and naturally to help maintain healthy blood pressure with a custom blend of garlic, vitamins, and minerals. And it's odor-free. I'm taking charge with Garlic Healthy Blood Pressure Formula.
These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. The term natural references only the garlic in the product. Use as directed.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
4:05, and with your KVNU News update on this Tuesday afternoon, I'm Will Feelight. The Weber County Fire District says 2 men, including a firefighter, were injured after a propane tank that one man was using for heat caught fire and exploded in Marriott-Slaterville. Now, crews were called to the Ogden Self-Storage Facility just after 9:20 yesterday morning, and when they arrived, they found heavy smoke and flames coming out of several units. Now, investigators believe that a man was moving his stuff out of storage and was using a propane tank as part of a heater while he worked. However, the tank caught fire and exploded, causing injuries to the victim's hand. Now, the injured firefighter was transported to the hospital for further evaluation. Firefighters say that in total, 14 units were damaged in the fire, and investigators say at least 6 units were completely destroyed. The total cost of the damages is estimated to be between $80,000 to $100,000. And a man driving a pickup truck died yesterday after he hit 2 homes in the Eagle Mountain area. Sergeant Ray Ormond with the Utah County Sheriff's Office says the man was driving on Pony Express Parkway yesterday afternoon when he left the roadway for an unspecified reason and hit the 2 buildings. Now, officials suspect that a medical emergency occurred in the older man and he was pronounced dead at the scene. Community members in the area said the crash happened in the Overland neighborhood, and this isn't the first time it's happened. Now, no one else was injured in that crash. And it's college basketball tonight as the Aggies preparing to face off against the Colorado State Rams for the first time this season. As head coach Jared Calhoun said yesterday, he has a lot of respect for this team.
I think they're a terrific team. I think they've gotten better over time. I think, today's landscape, you're pretty fortunate if you get off to a good start, right? Because you have so many moving parts. But a great offensive coach. I think one thing that goes unnoticed with these guys is their defense. They're 3rd overall in points given up. They're defending at a high level. Seem very connected and playing great basketball.
What's the biggest? Now, we'll hear more from the coach tonight, beginning with our pregame at 8 o'clock, as it's a late tip, 9 o'clock in the Spectrum, and we'll have it for you here on KVNU, and then our postgame and Aggie call will immediately follow right about 11:15. Well, clouds today, and it's going to get cold tonight, as we've only been in the high 20s today. Tonight, we're going to drop to around 5 degrees overnight. Then tomorrow, highs expected to be only around 23. With the wind chill, it's going to feel more like about 6 degrees for much of the day tomorrow. And then the storm comes in Thursday, bringing with it first a chance of some snow. Could see a couple inches of accumulation. especially here in the valleys, with more expected to fall in the mountains, and then it'll turn into rain by Friday and into the weekend. The storm expected to last in the first of next week. And Firehouse Subs brings you our news and weather. I'm Will Feelright with your KVNU News Update.
The colder weather is here. Are your quilts and blankets looking dingy? Is your winter coat or jacket dirty enough to stand in the corner just by itself? Well, go to Mount Logan Laundry. It'll take no time at all to freshen up everything. They have the 55 and 80-pound washers, the biggest around, and great big dryers, too, and it costs a whole lot less than dry cleaning. Free Wi-Fi and drop-off service. Mount Logan Laundry really is the cleanest spot in town, on the corner of 5th East, 9th North, and Logan, or in Brigham at 1st East, 7th South. Mount Logan Laundry.
Information and news you need. News Talk KVNU 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
When it comes to my wife, I can readily admit it, without shame. I'm clueless. Seriously. This Valentine's, I haven't a clue. Yet I managed to sweep her off her feet with the right gift every time. How? Here's a clue for you.
Surprise your honey by going to Cox Honeyland for delicious popcorn, sweet fudge, seasonal gifts, and unique gift baskets. Don't forget, fill your container with their honey. It's second to none. Cox Honeyland and Gifts, 1780 South Highway 89, Logan.
Does your house have that closed-up smell? Do you feel like you're dusting more frequently? Have you noticed an increase in allergy symptoms? It might be time to have your air ducts clean. Call a Logan-based business, The Duct Hunter, at 435-770-4813 for a quote and to schedule an appointment.
We are the Duct Hunter. Breathe better, save money, protect your home. We are the Duct Hunter.
I recently had a meeting with a business owner that had his business insurance with one agent, his auto with another, and work comp with the state. Sounds confusing, right? This is Matt Robbins with Quality First Insurance. This individual loved the idea of a one-stop shop and saved hundreds of dollars by putting his insurance policies under one roof. Let Quality First be the one-stop shop for your insurance needs. Give us a call today, 435-752-0101.
This Valentine's Day, surprise your sweetheart with a watch from S.E. Needham Jewelers. You'll find competitive price on a large selection of Seiko, Citizen, Fossil, and Tissot watches. We provide impeccable service with our professional watch technicians. To top it off, all watches purchased at S.E. Needham Jewelers come with free lifetime battery replacement, free watch band adjustment, and free gift wrap. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 7. A Needham watch on every wrist. S.E. Needham Jewelers, middle of the block at the sign of the clock.
Do you know a champion in our community? Nominate them for the KVNU Above and Beyond Salute. Every Friday morning at 8:30, we'll spotlight a firefighter, law enforcement officer, healthcare worker, or other deserving individual and give them a $40 gift card to Firehouse Subs. Submit your nominations for the Above and Beyond Salute by visiting kvnutalk.com. Help us recognize the champions in our communities. The Above and Beyond Salute, sponsored by Firehouse Subs on News Talk KVNU, the voice of Northern Utah. KVNU's For the People with Jason Williams and Bill Walter.
And it is Utah known as the fraud capital of the world. Not because we have more people committing fraud, but because we have so many people falling for it.
Going beneath the headlines and connecting you to the newsmakers.
The radio is a great way to get the word out to a lot of people in an emergency. So we thank you for your help and being a partner with us.
For the People on News Talk KVNU 610 AM, 102.1 FM, online at 610kvnu.com and on the KVNU mobile app.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. It is a pretty gray and somewhat wintry feeling afternoon out there in Cache Valley. Appreciate everyone joining us here today, and I hope that you're able to stick with us throughout the show today. A lot to cover, to say the least. It is with pleasure, though, that we start off with a very special guest joining us here in relation to the legislative session, actually. We have a bill we've discussed a bit here on the show that involves classrooms, cell phones. We've had conversations about this for years now with Governor Cox also joining us to talk about this at different times. It's a big deal, to say the least. So we're happy to actually have joining us here on the air Christine Jackman. Now, Christine is working with an organization that has tried to make this happen here in Utah, to say the least. And Christine, appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you. I'm happy for the opportunity.
How did I do on setting that up? I didn't want to spoil everything. I wanted to let you kind of describe your work in your own words. But this is, I know, an issue that parents, let's put it that way, parents are very excited to have this out there and being discussed.
Yes, exactly. And as a parent, someone in the community, I feel really excited about this.
I also, and maybe this is something we can talk about a little bit more later in our conversation, but it's also one of those that sometimes I see something come up during the legislative session, a bill, and I think, well, that's a no-brainer. And yet this is an issue that hasn't just, slid through quickly, right?
Right. Yes. And, that's why it's exciting, though. I think the timing is right. I think that as we've looked at this and we've gone along and been doing these different community meetings throughout the state, and we just had one last week in Cache Valley a week ago.
Sure.
And we had almost 400 people show up to that. And you're starting to see that the timing is right. People are ready for there to be something done about the cell phones in classrooms.
Sure.
I think most parents, teachers, everyone is on the same page that something needs to be done. So I think that, maybe there's been different times when this is, people have talked about this. I know Governor Cox has been very interested in this for a while.
Sure.
And now I feel like the community, this is really showing that to the legislature that the state of Utah is ready to make this change for students.
And we also have this go round. We have a bill that is a little bit different, right? This is Senator Lincoln Fillmore is championing. I can't talk today. The bill this year, and instead of, I loved his description. We aired this on the show, but when he talked about it in a daily media briefing, he said, "We're setting the default to no phones in classrooms, but that doesn't mean." That under no circumstances can there be phones in classrooms. But instead of a teacher or a district or a school having to go petition the boards of education to ban cell phones, they would be banned by default, and they would then petition to allow them in some situations.
Right, exactly. And, we look at it, and currently, smartphones in the classroom are the norm in Utah right now.
Sure.
And as we're seeing, this is becoming a growing distraction, a growing issue. The statistics are backing all of that. It's looking like what you just said, to kind of flip that, and now let's make it's not the norm. Let's change what the norm is, that we are limiting smartphones. We're limiting smartwatches. Even, I love part of this bill. It says emerging technologies in classrooms because we don't even know what's to come, right?
That's right.
And so it's taking a look at all of that and saying, let's flip that and limit that, but not to say that we're not taking away, this bill is not to take away the local control. I love that part of it, that, there's room in this bill. It talks about the, local education agencies, which are in our case, these districts, right? Our districts, to adjust for local needs, as well as, during emergencies, the cell phones can be accessed. Sure. And also that there's exceptions for health and educational considerations for students, because there will be those.
Sure.
And so I think the honest truth is that once people have begun to understand that this bill encompasses those other parts, it's been amazing how on board we kind of have gotten with most people, which has been really exciting.
That was, this has been very educational for me, because I my gut reaction is, well, of course, cell phones can be a huge distraction. They don't necessarily have a valid place in the classroom. And then we learned from a Logan High history teacher that they were actually using cell phones and an app to have students create fake Facebook pages for famous historical figures and then do daily updates with them in classroom, status updates. I thought that was so creative, but that you could still do that under
in a
this
very
scenario,
controlled
right?
environment, right? It's more of a controlled. The issues we're talking about are, kids texting each other, and the interesting thing is, you look at this and you say they're noticing that like probably over 200 times in an average student's day, they're getting a notification on their phone.
Sure.
And you think, how does that work with them then listening to their math teacher, right?
Yeah. And I tell you, Christine, the challenges I faced as a student, I couldn't. I mean, I can just tell you right now, I would not be able to function in that world and learn a thing.
Right? And so we're setting these kids up. Right now you just feel like, wow, how are they able to have success? And that is why I love this bill and this initiative that, let's set up our kids in Utah for the greatest amount of success in the classroom. And that's what it's all about.
And so, Christine, as you and those working with you have sort of toured, for lack of a better word, toured the state and done these public meetings and gotten a lot of feedback. One objection that I hear come up all the time, and I'm curious your response to it, is, well, there's a safety issue here. I want my kids to be able to get a hold of me if there's a problem at the school.
Yes. And, it is interesting within this bill now they are saying, and I don't know exactly how that will look for each school and district, but that yes, if there was an emergency, that part of this would allow for them to have access to their phones. The other aspect of this is that, as we have been looking about these emergencies, and as a parent, I understand this because I feel those feels of what it's like to, feel nervous about what would happen in the case of an emergency with your child.
Sure. Being
there. And, but as you talk to teachers, this is an interesting perspective. This was actually from a teacher here at South Cache Middle School. And she said to me when I brought this up, because this has been the great part about what I've been doing, is so much communication, getting so much information from teachers who were right there in the classroom. And I brought this up to her. I said, what about this concern with being able to talk to your kid in the case of an emergency? And she said, well, I'll give you a teacher's perspective. That would actually make it so much harder for us in the case of an emergency, having all of these students who are worried about getting to their, texting mom and dad, versus focusing on the adult that is there to help them right there in the classroom.
I had never thought of that.
Because how much can I do when my child is at school and I'm here? I really have to trust the teacher who I know has been trained.
Sure.
That's the amazing thing now. They've been trained in these emergency situations. And like my friend who's the teacher said, she wants all eyes on her. That's going to be the best case scenario.
I had never thought of that. That makes so much sense, though, that in an earthquake or a fire at the school or anything like that, you want the teacher to have the undivided attention of the kids in the classroom to get out safely.
Exactly.
I had never thought of that. That is, I'm glad I asked that question. Christine, that's the point of what you're doing, right? Like you want people to understand, what this bill does, but you also want people to understand what problem we're trying to address here. And that's another thing I see often is people sometimes being kind of dismissive about this, just make them turn their phones off. Well, in theory, sure, right?
Sure. Yes. But you think about, and I think all parents understand this, is that we have, we're managing our own kids at different moments, trying to keep their attention on us when we're trying to talk to them. And you think about, let's put ourselves in the case of a teacher. And this is what I've also heard from them as well, is that they're constantly trying to determine how much time do I want to spend managing this kid who I know is currently on his phone, not focusing in my class, but it's taking away from the teaching time. And so I guess the feeling that all of us feel as parents sometimes about, okay, do I want to fight this battle right now? These teachers are doing that all the time instead of being able to focus on what we hope they can, and that is teaching the subjects that they're there to teach.
Sure. And that is really what it comes down to, right?
Exactly.
There is a reason we're in the classroom, and the cell phone makes it, in a lot of ways, impossible to achieve that goal.
Right. Yes. I mean, it's interesting what you mentioned earlier when you said back, how would you have managed through? I feel the same way. I mean, we joke, and with the group that we're a part of, we say how, back in our day, it would have been like us bringing in maybe a VCR and sitting in there and watching, our favorite movie, and, wondering, why can't we just do this? We're surprised if the teacher wanted us to put it away.
Sure.
Right? That's if we can relate it back to our time, that's what these kids truly, with these constant kind of distraction, that's what's happening.
Sure. And I think, one of the challenges here that I see, Christine, and maybe you have a perspective on this different, but I feel that as adults, we've acclimated to this. Adults are always shocked when I tell them, I'm a nerd. I work in the nerd world in the day job.
Yeah.
And I tell people sometimes, your cell phone and the apps on your cell phone, especially social media apps, they're designed like the floor of a gambling casino in Las Vegas.
Yes.
There's so much noise, so many lights, so many things going on. The goal, and if you read about this, casino floors are designed to shut your brain off so that you don't leave.
Exactly.
And people are surprised when I tell them that your cell phone, especially the notifications on social media apps, it's designed the same way. And I feel, as adults, I feel like we've stopped finding that to be a problem. Does that make it harder to say to adults then, this is very much a problem for your child?
Right. Well, it is interesting because it's true, and we're all dealing with this, right? I mean, these algorithms and these, essentially we're up against some brain scientists, right?
And they're good at what they do, right?
Yes, this is what they do. They figured out ways to really get us so that we are, as adults, as all the ages, right, to really locked in. That was a great analogy to the casino. But I think about the interesting thing is once adults, even the teenagers, once they get educated as to this more, and once they understand these statistics, really it's through education. I feel like people get on board.
Sure.
I mean, they have found even in some of these schools, I spoke for a while down to the Granite School District, their superintendent, he's now at the governor's office, so he was their prior one. They have already done some early adapting as far as this work in some of their schools.
Oh, really?
As far as limiting the cell phones. And I asked him flat out, I said, well, did you get a lot of pushback on this? And he said to me, the interesting thing is no. At first there's a little bit, but, he goes, as people get educated and as parents start to see and the students start to feel it, he goes, you just really don't. And so I keep reminding myself of that there are these early these schools that have already began to adapt this idea, and that they're having a lot of success. So I really do believe it's possible.
Sure.
That we can do this.
And that, this is, I love this, Christine, a comment from a listener here. And it really, it is to some extent this simple to wrap your head around this, to conceptualize this, if you will.
Yes.
A listener says, what could children possibly need to be seeing on their phone mid-class that is important enough to interrupt the class? And that's a great question, right?
That is a great question from a wise listener. That's the simple. Exactly. I mean, that's it. Whoever that was summed it up right there.
That is very cool. I love that. Thank you. That was from Denise. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Yes.
So what happens next in this process? The bill has been made public. It's unveiled. And if I understand correctly, it's made it through the first committee hearing, right?
which is exciting. And
that's good news, right?
Last Tuesday they had there was the Senate committee meeting, so it needs to go through that, right, and pass that, which it did unanimously. I mean, super exciting right there. So they had,
Sure.
That was advanced unanimously out of that Senate Education Committee. Now it needs to go on to a full Senate vote. And so that will happen. And so, I mean, there really is some great momentum as this bill keeps progressing. So that unanimous vote out of that Senate committee was a really big deal.
That is very cool.
I mean, and it was neat. They had there was actually a girl up here from Green Canyon who was a part of our work that we were doing that night at Green Canyon High School.
Oh, really?
She went on to that Senate committee hearing. I put her on through virtually. She was on there connected, and she spoke at that Senate committee hearing and expressed her experience when she's been in some of her different classes where she hasn't had her cell phone and the difference that that's made. And it was really impactful to hear from a student. So that was one of our local Green Canyon students that I feel like really made an impact in moving this forward.
That is very cool. And that's a great segue, too, into one other thing I wanted to talk to you about. As you've done this work, and again, for listeners, our guest is Christine Jackman. She is working with a group that pushing a bill that is so far faring very well at the legislative session that would change the default in Utah to no cell. Right now, the default is cell phones in the classrooms. If a teacher or a school or a district wants to change that, they have to petition the board for approval. This bill would simply flip that. So the cell phone would be banned by default, but in certain situations, as Christine has mentioned, a health situation, a public safety situation, a specific project in a class or something like that, they could petition to have them allowed in a controlled environment to reduce the disruptions. And so, Christine, again, it leads us right into the next question. What are you hearing from young people on this?
Right. Well, I mean, I will tell you this. At our event that we held last week at Green Canyon High School, I would say 50% of the people in attendance were students.
Oh, wow.
And so that was fascinating. High school students. We also had some college students, because this is the interesting thing as we talk to college students. They're saying, I mean, we got so much support from Utah State students. We had one of their sororities came, and they were all there. We had student athletes that came. And the idea, as I've talked to them, is that they're saying this would have made such a big difference in our high school experience. Can you believe that?
Sure.
That's what you're hearing from the college students. So they're there to say, hey, we can see now at this point in our life, this would have been really beneficial if this would have been the case for us. So that's a neat perspective to hear from those students. As far as the high school students, you know, I mean, that one's interesting. I think you hear the range. You know, you hear all across the board, right? You hear some of them, what would that be like?
Oh, yeah.
And then you hear others that are saying, wow, that would make a big difference. I mean, we had down our rally at the Capitol. That was back in November when we all came together down at the Capitol to begin kind of this kickoff, this whole initiative. And we had a student from East High School that spoke at that.
Really?
And he spoke because at East High School, they have already adopted this. They've already adopted this. And he spoke about what a difference it had made in his high school experience.
Really?
He said that as far as there being a different kind of community within the high school, him meeting and being around and talking to students that he didn't know at all until now.
Oh, sure.
And the different learning environment. I mean, he spoke so positively about what it has been like for him and the change it's been. So I keep going back to that I think that even the students who may have concerns about this, I think as they get more educated on it and as this gets implemented, I really believe that students are going to appreciate it.
Sure.
I do. I think that even if they don't know it yet.
That's what. Yeah, that's the catch, right? That again, I'm obviously looking at this with an adult's perspective, but trying to put myself in this position with these distractions.
It's a big ask, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I would have struggled a lot as a student,
right?
in this day and age.
Right, and not even to mention the other issues, right? The bullying and just having that away from that period of time when they're in the classroom, that safety as well, right? I mean, there's so many things. The connection, and we're talking about distraction, but we could spend a whole nother amount of time talking about what that would mean as far as connection goes.
Sure.
For students, like the East High School student talked about, right? I'm connecting with students peers that I never had even seen.
Yes. To interact with each other in a way that you're not going to be able to in a different setting. Christine, I've taken more time than I asked for today, but I appreciate you joining us to talk about this.
I appreciate you having me on.
Well, so what can parents who are supportive or just want to learn more, what can they do to help get this through the legislative session?
Yes, well, that's a great question. I would say that if you go onto the Utah Legislature website, first of all, you can get on there. I don't know if people know this, but you can go on there and there's kind of a link on there where you can track the bills. So if you're interested in this one and you want to see how it's going to be progressing, you can go on there and track that. The other thing that you can do on there is you can go on and find out who is your legislator, your representatives if you don't know, and you can go on there and it will have their information. And, it does make a difference. It really does when they see that this is something that their constituents are thinking about, care about, are interested in, right? This is something they support.
Very nice.
When, that's a big deal. And so calling and writing, we say that it is a big deal to call and write your legislator. That lets them know that this is something that their constituents care about.
That is, and there's a lot more you can engage with as well. If for listeners out there, the Policy Project and the Focused Student Project, which is the organization Christine Jackman, our guest here, is working with to help educate and raise awareness about all of this. They do a lot of stuff, including mental health in the classroom, cyberbullying, which is a very real thing. The effect smartphones and social media have on decreased social interaction and more. A lot of great information that you can engage with. I've linked to the policy
project. All there. Thank you. That would be great.
You bet. I've linked to the Policy Project site on our Facebook page, but I recommend to listeners follow them on Instagram, connect with Christine and her team. And Christine, it's been a pleasure to have you join us today. I'm hoping we have an excuse in a couple of weeks to have you back on to talk about successful passage of the bill and what happens next.
Yes, I would love to, because this is just the last thing I'll say.
Sure.
Clearly I get too passionate about this, but the last part I'd say is, because at the end of the day, the Policy Project, it's not just about passing these policies. It is about getting the community. I mean, we need to get the community involved in talking about this and understanding, and that's how these things get implemented, and that's how the change really takes place.
Absolutely.
So I would love to talk about, hopefully after this all passes and, what happens now.
It's a great conversation. I look forward to having that one way or another.
Yes,
but I do hope this bill passes. And to listeners, engage with your lawmakers. Let them know what you think of all of this. And again, connect with the Policy Project. A lot of great information you can interact with that not only helps on issues like this, understanding a piece of legislation, but could actually help in your home, in conversations with your child. So
very
please.
Good point.
Our guest again has been the Northern Utah representative of the Policy Project, Christine Jackman. Find the Policy Project on Instagram. I've linked to their website, simply thepolicyproject.org, on our Facebook page as well. And Christine, again, thank you for spending so much time with us today. Can't wait to see where this one goes.
Thank you so much for the time. I sure appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. We'll speak again soon.
Thanks.
And thanks to our listeners for tuning in as well. Stick around. More of For the People after this look at the news with KVNU's Will Feel Right.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Transgender college students in Utah will be prohibited from living in dorms consistent with their gender identity under a bill that cleared its final legislative hurdle yesterday. The state house, which had already passed the measure, moved again to approve it with small tweaks following a heated Senate debate in which one Republican told trans people, quote, "If you don't fit in, then it's your own fault," end of quote. It now heads to the desk of Republican Governor Spencer Cox, who has expressed support for the restrictions. Now, a spokesperson for the governor said that he will closely examine the bill, which passed with veto-proof margins in both chambers. Now, under the bill, students at the state's public colleges and universities can only enter or live in a gendered space such as a dorm building, locker room, or bathroom that corresponds with their sex assigned at birth. Now, transgender students can otherwise live in single rooms in co-ed dorm buildings. Well, 2 men have pled guilty to fraud charges that involved hundreds of Utahns pouring in thousands of dollars. Now, according to the Department of Justice, over the course of several years from 2019 to 2022, the men fraudulently obtained nearly $26 million. Now, the scheme involved investors pouring in $30,000 to $40,000 per person with an apparent opportunity to make passive income through an automated Amazon store via investment company called Alpha Influence. Now, Jeremiah the Bull Evans and Cole Brimhall were both federally indicted and pled guilty to security fraud charges. Evans also pled guilty to money laundering charges. Now, the scheme involving investors had promised the investment principal would be recouped within 12 to 18 months with a return on investment resulting on average of 7 to 10% per month after that. Now, Evans was described as the owner of Alpha Influence. An investigation revealed that he obtained over $21 million from approximately 530 victims. And authorities have now released the identity of a man who died while skiing in the backcountry of Salt Lake County over the weekend. Now, the avalanche was reported in Big Cottonwood Canyon Saturday afternoon about 12:45. 2 men were skiing when the avalanche occurred. One of the men sustained a leg injury and was able to be extricated off of the mountain and transported to a hospital, while the deceased victim, identified as 59-year-old Eugenio Juan Gonzalez, was pronounced dead at the scene. Now, Salt Lake County Mayor Jenny Wilson provided a statement Saturday night in response to the tragedy, saying she sent her heartfelt condolences out to the family and friends of the skier who had tragically lost their life. The mayor also expressed gratitude for search and rescue teams and others who had assisted. Well, we're going to continue to see cold temperatures as we only hit the high 20s today. Tonight, we're going to be down into the single digits, should drop to about 5 overnight tonight. And then cold temperatures continuing tomorrow, even with some sunny weather. Highs expected to be only around 23, and with the wind chill, it's going to feel more like 6 degrees before we start to see some snow coming in for Thursday, then turning into rain by Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And news and weather this hour brought to you by Dr. Keith Nilsson, who can provide relief from your sports injury or arthritis, or if you're suffering from knee pain, contact Dr. Keith Nilsson. I'm Will Feelright with your KVNU News Update.
ABC News, I'm Chuck Sievertson. Another executive order signed at the White House by President Trump. It tells agencies to identify which agency functions or agencies are not required by law. And it says no more than 1 employee should be hired for every 4 workers leaving. An American, Mark Bogle, held in Russia since drug charges in 2021, has been freed, says the White House. ABC's Patrick Reevell.
Vogel's case was known to reporters. He was one of those Americans who was believed to have been seized by Russia over the past few years to be used as a bargaining chip. And I think clearly the timing of his release now is notable.
The president suggested today he wouldn't withhold U.S. aid to Jordan or Egypt if they don't accept more Gaza refugees. He met with Jordan's King Abdullah. Egypt's president has postponed a trip to Washington indefinitely, say Egyptian media. Public schools in Philadelphia will be closed on Friday so students and educators can celebrate the Eagles' Super Bowl win. This is ABC News.
Hi, I'm Wendy, co-founder of Bell Sculpt. I know what it's like to feel uncomfortable in your own skin, worrying about how you look, feeling drained, and just not like yourself. Hormone changes, pregnancy, or aging can lead to weight gain and challenges that aren't your fault. That's why I believe so strongly in what we do at Bell Sculpt. I've had a procedure myself, and it transformed more than just my shape. It boosted my energy, metabolism, and confidence. If you're ready to feel like yourself again, Bell Sculpt is here to help. Book your free consultation at bellsculpt.fm.
This is Senior Branch Office Administrator Monique Benson bringing you the daily financial market report on behalf of financial advisor Daryl Arnell and Edward Jones. Stocks were mixed on Tuesday with the S&P 500 closing near the flat line while the NASDAQ finished slightly lower. From a leadership standpoint, consumer staples and energy were among the top performing sectors of the S&P 500, with energy receiving a boost from higher oil prices. The Dow closed up 123 points at 44,594. The NASDAQ closed down 70 points at 19,644. And the S&P 500 closed up 2 points at 6,069. In the bond market, 10-year Treasury yields were trading at 4.54%. In stocks of local interest, Home Depot was up $2.34 at $416.34. Lowe's Companies was up 59 cents at $257.03. Nucor was up 58 cents at $138.11. Thermo Fisher was down $7.63 at $545.23. And Northrop Grumman was down 53 cents at $473.84. The price of crude oil was up 0.91 cents at $73.23, and the spot price of gold was down $7.10 to $2,927.30. This has been today's financial market report brought to you on behalf of Edward Jones, member SIPC, and financial advisor Daryl Arnell, serving individual investors with personalized attention and financial advice. If you need to contact us, our number is 435-713-6925.
This is the Sean Hannity Show.
The Delta smelt, if you look it up and look at a picture of it, it looks like a little minnow fish. It's not even like an exotic fish. And by the way, not even an endangered species. And they cared more about the Delta smelt than they did about the farmers, and the farmers lost their entire livelihood because they chose a minnow fish that was not even on the endangered species list over the farmers.
Weekday afternoons from 1 to 4 on News Talk KVNU.
That suitcase you've been packing.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People.
Just sit down and talk to me.
Thanks again to Christine Jackman, and for those who just tuned in or caught the end of that and were asking, Christine is with the Policy Project. They can be found a couple of different ways on Instagram. They are just the Policy Project. You can also visit thepolicyproject.org, their website. And Christine is the Northern Utah representative of the Policy Project. The bill itself, this is, again, a bill that will reset the default in Utah, according to its Senate sponsor, Lincoln Fillmore. The default in Utah right now is that cell phones are allowed in public schools. If a teacher, a school, a district wants to ban cell phones, they have to go petition their boards, the local and state school board in some cases even, and get authorization. Now, some school districts have done this. Fillmore said this is the opposite of the way it should be. Cell phones should be banned in classrooms in Utah by default. And if a school, for a specific project or a specific reason, ongoing or temporary, wants to allow cell phones, then they should go to the board and present their case, and the board can still authorize it. Personally, I think it's a great solution. This would, for those who've asked, this would include smartwatches as well. And the whole goal of this is to reduce the distractions in the classroom. So the policy project has taken it upon themselves to try and educate the public about what these bills do and don't mean. Great question from a listener. Listener says, would this include tablets? I think so. I should have asked Christine that. Great question. I didn't think to ask. The language of the bill itself says handheld portable electronic device. So they're including smartwatches in that, cell phones, I would assume tablets as well. So, and again, the goal is just to reduce distractions. Parents have expressed concern about previous efforts to ban cell phones in classrooms, citing public safety concerns. In fact, one parent called into our show and we were talking about last year's bill in the 2024 session and said, I want to be able to get a hold of my kid if there's a wildfire, an earthquake, or God forbid, a shooting at a school, a lockdown situation. I want to be able to hear from them. And I get that. But as Christine said, the children, especially in a grade school setting, are a lot safer if they are 100% focused on the teacher who is trained to get them out of the school safely in an earthquake or a wildfire situation. Or, again, God forbid, a school shooting situation. So that cell phone can be a distraction that is a negative in that scenario. On the flip side of that, as I mentioned to Christine, just a few months ago, we had Frank Schofield and some history teachers at Logan High in that were showing some really creative use of actually incorporating cell phones and smartwatches into the classroom, social media even. They were having students basically manage and update fake Facebook pages and Instagram accounts for famous historical figures. And then, they would provide a status update for the historical event that actually happened on that day, a creative way to learn history. And that required them having access to their phones and social media during class time. But again, under this bill that Phil Moore is running, that would be allowed. The school would just have to go present to the board and say, here's what we're planning. And the board would say, oh, okay, yeah, cell phones can be used in that scenario. That's very creative and cool. I assume that's what they'd say, right? If you want to read the bill, it's Senate Bill 178. It is actually on its first substitute already, which means there's a lot of discussion happening on this. Some of the specific language, classroom hours is defined as time during which a student receives scheduled teacher-supervised instruction in a physical or virtual classroom setting during regular school operating hours and as part of approved educational curriculum. Classroom hours, this is carefully spelled out, does not include lunch periods, recess, transit time between classes, meaning kids would be allowed to pull their phones out in the hallways and check messages or something like that. Study halls, unless directly supervised by a qualified instructor, at which point the cell phone would be not allowed again. And after-school activities, unless part of the approved extended learning program, in which case that's an extension of the classroom and the cell phone wouldn't be allowed in that specific after-school activity, all others though. And then, of course, independent study time occurring outside scheduled instruction. So emerging technology is also defined in this bill. It means any device that has or will be able to act in place of or as an extension of an individual's cell phone or electronic notification device. So they're covering the future on this as well. And they're, like I said, including smartwatches and more. It's a very simple bill. It basically adds a piece of code to Utah code annotated since 1953, Utah Code Section 53G-7-226. And it adds probably, I'm scrolling here, probably about 30 lines is all. And again, as Senator Fillmore has said, this is just resetting the default. The default now is cell phones are allowed. Teachers and schools and districts have had to go to their respective boards and petition the board for authorization to ban cell phones in classrooms. This would change that to where the default is a ban, and then in specific scenarios or even for specific students. One issue, as Christine and I discussed, that was brought up is a type 1 diabetic student. Many pumps that are used by type 1 diabetics connect to cell phone apps, and that's a way to monitor your blood sugar in a more real-time scenario. Obviously, in that scenario, banning that child from accessing their cell phone could be a health issue. This bill allows for exceptions like that. So I think this is a smart way to go about it. Great question from a listener here. Do we know this will help? No, I guess. No, we don't. What I can tell you is if you've had a cell phone for a long time, you've probably had experience with how distracting it can be. Now imagine being a young person with a not fully developed brain in a setting where you're trying to learn as much as possible in what is really a short period of time. Throw a cell phone and constant notifications on top of that. I don't think you have to be a behaviorologist, a child welfare researcher, a technology expert. I don't think you need any of those sets of experiences to connect those dots. So, no, I guess we don't know that this will help, and maybe we find that it doesn't make much of a difference in the end. I would be surprised if that's what we find. I'm guessing what we find is that this makes a huge difference, and that the first people to praise it are going to be the kids. Once they realize they can sit in a classroom without the constant notifications and bings and boops, I'm guessing their education experience is going to be a lot more pleasant. A guess, but one I'm confident in. So, again, it's Senate Bill 178 if you'd like to look it up, and we'll be back with more of For the People right after this.
News Talk 610 AM, 102.1 FM, KVNU.
Get ready for the boldest way to Baja, Mexico. Morris Columbus Travel and Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines are excited to announce the Ovation of the Seas, the biggest ship in the West, sailing from LA starting in June. Enjoy skydiving, a water park, bumper cars, and flow rider surf lessons on your way to Ensenada and Cabo. Call Morris Columbus Travel to book today.
To start this foundation.
In August 2020, after the death of George Floyd, Bridget Floyd and other family members established the George Floyd Memorial Foundation in support of the Black community.
It's going to take more than just us as a foundation. It's going to take the community, the world, to make a change.
Fight for racial justice for the Black community. Learn how at lovehasnolabels.com. Brought to you by Love Has No Labels and the Ad Council.
I will be right by your side.
Women can have it all, including heart attacks. But symptoms like jaw pain, nausea, unusual fatigue, dizziness, and backache are often different and more subtle than for a man. The fact is, heart disease is the #1 killer of women. Know the signs. Learn more at getheartchecked.org. From Women's Heart Alliance, in partnership with Women Heart.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me. I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. The government efficiency push by the cost-cutting team of Elon Musk is getting a welcome reception by House Republicans. But what will they do? Also, if Americans are spending more than ever, why does surveys show they're financially stressed? We'll try to square the findings. And avoiding tax scams as you prepare to file this season. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. I'm trying my best to get into the... I'm not a big Valentine's guy. I'm also not a Valentine's hater. In fact, sometimes I think the Valentine's hate it can get a little silly in and of itself. But to try and get at least into recognition here on the show of the Valentine's holiday coming up and all those who are celebrating and having fun with it. Coming up in hour 2, we've got some trivia for you. Some old-timey terms of endearment. If you're looking to shake up your Valentine's card or that note on the flowers or whatever it might be, I've got some little tips and tricks for you. We also have... some entomology that will surprise you. Modern words, including one that is a name for a really, really nasty bacteria that actually stem from the word love. But why is kind of interesting in and of itself. So that will be my attempt at getting into the holiday mood here on the show with some Valentine's related trivia, to say the least. That's coming up in hour 2. We'll also kick things off with this week's episode of Sutherland Institute's Defending Ideas. Last week, the crew at Sutherland Institute talked a little bit about the need to better understand some of these ideological arguments that we have around safety nets and taxation and all of that. This week, they're extending that. They're actually taking that out into specific realms, and in this case, talking about what would increase confidence in elections and our state legislatures like our own coming anywhere close to the right solutions. That's next. The Sutherland Institute sneak peek at their Defending Ideas episode.